you and I met. The book was done. You were kind of in the final copy editing. You had a book designer. So shout out to George, right? Who was a friend of my friend Brooke and your designer. And that's how we connected. So you were kind of already on your way with your book. And you and I connected because I think the original call was, I need help with PR. And I was like, well, is it PR or book marketing? And we talked more about it. So it was the perfect time. I mean, I loved where you were in your journey because you had done so much of the legwork already, right? And so I think one of the questions, or when you and I started talking, it was, okay, Nancy, this is what I got. This is where I am. What do we need to do, right?
Yeah.
And so what were your biggest, again, you came with so many things already organized in terms of your website and the digital and everything else. What were your biggest questions when we started working together or kind of at that juncture in terms of, okay, where do we go next, right?
Yeah, I think so in conjunction with writing the book is when I also started my own consulting firm and kind of made it some professional changes. And so when we started working together, I think that what I knew was, and had been advised was, okay, it's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, like there's a million books that are published. If there's not a way for people to know that it's there, like it's just not gonna, it's not gonna be able to get out. But I felt like my background is, again, it's in the markets, like I'm more of a strategic thinker, but I have a great appreciation for marketing in the media and how all that works, but I never interacted with it in a way where it's like, okay, this is kind of how the sausage gets made. And so what I felt like was when we first started interacting, it was a question of like, I had some online presence, but it was a bunch of independent entities that hadn't really been stuck together. And honestly, it was because the pieces of it had been developed over time independently, and there hadn't been a thoughtful way to like put them together. And so I felt like our time together was much more about like, let's get the track laid out.
Right.
So then as the book comes out, like then we can, work on the PR side of things to like let the trains run. But it was more like all of these pieces were like all over the place. So to stitch it together with a pretty comprehensive and cohesive strategy. And then I think what's really cool is like, here we are 4 or 5 months later to start seeing like the fruit of that, like web traffic is better, like newsletter subscriptions are better, like the social followers are better. So all of those pieces are together, and it's because the whole thing is now working together and supporting the whole, as opposed to like each part being functionally in competition with each other.
Right.
Which is where I was before. And just because I didn't know what I was doing. I mean,
well, and also I like to say, you described that so perfectly. I like to say also, you as the expert, you're in the forest, you're in with the trees and you're seeing all the trees and you're taking care of this, you're taking care of that. And, it's a whole lot easier for an outsider, for me to come in and be like, okay, wait a second, we're missing the forest. Let's go back and look at the forest. And I think the other thing in terms of the approach, I love your analogy of the track, is I call that foundation, right? Like I also am much more, I'm as interested in what happens after the book is launched for you, the expert, right? As opposed to that very microscopic focus on, we're just focusing on book launch and we're going to sell 1,000 copies and then it's going to be awesome. And that's it, right? Like I a bit like probably you with your clients, like that holistic strategy of let's make this work so it's still working for you 2 or 3 years from now, right?
Right. Yep.
Let's talk about if you're going to get hired for speaking, how we're going to do that. So again, it was your digital platform was great. We just kind of did some maneuvering of pieces so it told a more cohesive story about you, about your content, and I would like, and I think I would say also, not at the sacrifice of your business, but we worked to elevate you as the kind of author and expert, as well as started trying to figuring out a way to make a home for your book, right? Like
yes, yeah, absolutely.
And so that was fun. But we didn't, again, do it to the like there wasn't this independent personality that we went and created on the interworld, in the interwebs, right? Like there was and so one of the things, like we originally started, and you had created a whole separate website for your book, which some people do, right? And what we did is we kind of brought it in-house to your business so that, again, if somebody comes and learns about you and your book, they also have it in the context of like what you do professionally. And I think that was one of the things, maybe, I don't want to speak for you, but that becomes a struggle, right? Like, do I have this profile as an author and do I have this profile as my business? How do we tell that story?
Yeah, I think so. It's this question of like, and especially as somebody who sells consulting services, like there's not a more nebulous term out there than, I mean, like what is consulting? Like,
right.
I mean, and ultimately, like you're selling a thought process. It is that advisory relationship that's there. And so for my business, like the book is a really nice entry point into seeing how David thinks about the world. And what's interesting, like I view my work as like, it's kind of a three-legged stool. So like, it's like, what's important to the individual, what's important to the family collectively, and then how do you build a business around that? So even like the book is only like the first leg of the stool. And you kind of tell where this is going. Like hopefully like book 2 is on the family and book 3 is about like the office as a construct. But like it's still, it becomes an entry point into like, I still like, I write a blog like once a week, all of these white papers and all these other pieces. So it's all about breadcrumbs, right? Like you want to give people a pathway so that they can see where you're at. And at least within my world, like people have, to chart, for a larger project, which is frankly a pretty big check size. I think people want to know what they're getting for that. And like content marketing or however you want to phrase it is such a natural way to at least like minimize the potential for buyer's remorse.
Right.
So that they at least go into it and say like, okay, this guy our thinking seems to be in alignment. It seems like there's going to be a lot of value add. Now there's all sorts of reasons why an engagement could go badly, but hopefully like at the outset, they feel a potential client feels as good as possible.
Right.
And that's really, I mean, and look, like with families and with multi-generational families, like hopefully like I have the potential to work with clients for years and years and years. So the more work that we can do up front to start a business relationship off, like the better. And so how great for them to know, like, here's also like a bunch of other things about how I think about the world. So